nata in mezzo mare, è nata in mezzo mare.
Good afternoon. We are here in an island called Lipari, one of the islands north of Sicily. This is one of the stops in our OAT tour group. And with me on my left is Jerry from what state?
From the state of Maryland.
Okay. And this is Jerry. Okay. And on my right is Margaret and her husband. And what state are you from, Margaret?
Iowa.
Iowa. And
Yes,
is that true?
Paul.
Paul. So I'm conducting this interview for an educational way to understand the culture, the history of this place, and also to ask my travel mates of their experiences, because next to me are people who have traveled so many times and so many different places. So let's start with Jerry. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, Jerry? Anything you want to say? You know, I need to know where you're from, where did you come from originally, your status as a single, married, if you have children, something like that, so they know where you're from.
All right, well, I was born and raised in Lynchburg, Virginia. Was there until about 22 years old when I started to working for the Federal Reserve System. Eventually, I was transferred to Baltimore, Maryland as an audit manager, and about 5 years later, I met my wife, and I've been in Baltimore, Maryland area ever since.
Okay, very good. And Margaret, tell us about yourself, where you're from and your family.
Yes, I'm from Dubuque, Iowa, and I'm a retired reading teacher. And we have a son and a daughter with 4 grandsons, 2 each.
Okay. And Paul, where are you from originally?
I grew up in southern Wisconsin and grew up on a dairy farm, and I worked my entire career with John Deere as a test engineer for the construction equipment division, and we have 2 kids, a girl and a boy, and 4 grandsons, and they live in the Chicago area.
So you can see we have a group of people who are family. They believe in family. They have children or grandchildren. All right. I know that they travel a lot, but you people don't know about their experiences. So we're going to delve into why they travel, where they've gone, and what they've learned in their travel. So our second question I have is, why, Jerry, do you like to travel?
I like to travel because of the variety and meeting many different people, learning, of course, about different cultures. In my opinion, the most important aspect of traveling really is the people and the culture, not the buildings and not the scenery, not the monuments, but interacting with the people who live in that particular area of the world.
Okay, that's beautiful. And Margaret, why do you travel?
I love to travel because I love learning about what people do in other countries, what their culture is like. I love seeing their countries, all the landmarks, and it's just the more I can see and more I can learn. And
so you travel to learn?
I do. I travel to learn.
All right, Paul. Your wife says she likes to travel and learn. You're always along with her.
Yes.
So is that the same reason for you?
Well, I like to visit a lot of places that we've heard about, things that you see. Also, a lot of our families didn't originate from the United States. They came from either Scandinavia or, in my case, Germany. And so I was always curious about the culture back home, to where they came from, emigrated from, and also, to learn what I find in other countries versus the perception I get from media or anything that I've heard. And oftentimes there's a real discrepancy. When I get to the country, I find out that it's a little bit different than what I've heard.
And that's what we're going to try to discover. So they've told you, my 3 guests here, they told you why they like to travel and their purpose for their travel. So let's go in a little deeper. So how do you choose where to travel, Jerry? How do you choose that?
Well, initially we we decided to travel to areas that were the furthest away from the United States that also had a lot of interest to us. And that was Australia, New Zealand, Antarctica, South Africa. And we've pretty much for many years concentrated on international travel with just a little bit of domestic travel thrown in every once in a while to take a breather.
So in other words, Jerry, you travel because you've never been to that country, plus it's far away from the United States and you want to discover that country.
Well, that plus, of course, what we've heard about the country. For instance, in New Zealand, we knew that the bungee jumping was originated there, and jet boating was originated there. And we've talked to a lot of people about how beautiful the country is, but the nature and so forth. So that was a motivation for going to New Zealand.
So in other words, Jerry, you travel because you've read about it, so you want to validate what you've heard and read.
Validate, and participate wherever we can.
That's interesting. So validation and participation. Margaret, do you agree with that?
Yes. I like to trying to think. Travel. Looking at the question, what was it?
How do you choose where to travel?
Yes. There are some countries that I'm especially interested in. For instance, the Scandinavian countries because of my background. And there are other countries and places that I've read about, heard about, and it just seems like something interesting that I want to see.
Okay.
How
about you, Paul? Do you agree with what your wife has said?
Well, one thing Margaret didn't mention is our first time in 1970 together in Scandinavia, we visited some of her relatives with her parents at the same time, and also her sister and brother-in-law. And then we were able also to go on that trip. We were able to visit into Germany, so forth, places a little bit that I can direct.
So it's in other words, you travel because you want you want to know how your connection is as where you're from. You're trying to validate where you come from. So we have validation and also getting knowledge about your curiosity. So validation, curiosity, and getting to know more about the country itself. So now let's see how much experience our travelers have done. So Jerry, you have told me, but let's let the audience know, where have you traveled? Can you name those places?
Well, no, we've been to 120 countries. It would be very difficult to name all of them, but for many years our favorite was New Zealand and Antarctica and South Africa. Since then, most recently, we visited Azerbaijan and Georgia and Armenia, and they rank now pretty high on our list as favorite countries that we have visited.
Now, let me ask you, Jerry, you've been on OAT, Overseas Adventure Travel. How many of these have you done?
14 trips between the two of them, yes.
I've just done 4. And Margaret, where have you traveled, you and Paul?
We have traveled many of the European countries, England, Scotland, Ireland, France, Germany, Spain, Portugal, Croatia, and we've traveled to Russia, to China, to Australia, around from Buenos Aires, Argentina, around down around the Cape Horn and up the Chile side.
Wow.
And
so you can see it's impressive where these people have traveled. And Paul, you're the other half of his family here. So anything else you want to add of where you've traveled?
Well, we had the privilege, in my last year of work, I went to South Africa to a business there that we worked with, and Margaret went along with me, so we were 2.5 weeks into Richards Bay, South Africa area.
South Africa.
So we got to meet a lot with the people that lived there, which was really very pleasant.
Well, a lot of people, they have a bucket list. I don't know if I have one, but I just, I haven't been there. I'd like to go there. Jerry, have you fulfilled all your bucket list with the 121 countries you have visited, or is there still more?
Well, there are still more, and I can't say that except for the first few countries did we actually have a bucket list. A lot of the times where we go depends upon the time of year, depends upon what we've heard recently, and things like that. So it's not necessarily ticking off a country one at a time until we get to the end of a bucket list.
So how many countries will you visit in a year since you are retired, right? So how many have you planned this year?
This year we will have a total of 6 trips.
That's impressive, 6 trips. And Margaret, have you planned anything more other than this trip here to Italy?
This year, we're going to another Caribbean island. We've actually gone to several and just seen them. So this year we are going to one more.
Grand Cayman.
Grand Cayman, right.
And what's the reason for Grand Cayman? You haven't been there?
No, we haven't been there.
Okay.
So we've been to several others.
Do you have any decision, Paul, where you go? Or is it always Margaret's decision, or is it a joint decision?
No, it's a very mutual decision because we like a lot of the same things, and we haven't, we've visited part of Alaska, but we've not visited the interior of Alaska. So if we have a bucket list, that's probably one of them. But as when our family was growing up, we traveled extensively in the United States by car, all over the place, every state, and frequently we were gone for 2 weeks or more. So and into Canada as well. So.
All right, interesting things that you say. So when you guys travel, is there a purpose on why you travel to Mexico or South America? Is there something there that you want to learn going to that country when you travel, Jerry?
Well, in the case of South America, Margaret mentioned Buenos Aires in Argentina, and of course also Bariloche in Argentina. We had always heard that Buenos Aires is the Paris of South America, so we wanted to go there to see for ourselves. Mm-hmm. And in fact, that's one of our favorite countries in the world is Buenos Aires. We've been there 3 times.
And what is the reason why it's one of your favorite, Jerry?
Well, it's a very sophisticated place that they have wonderful art museums, and we really like the panadas there.
Okay. How about the tango? It was born in Buenos Aires.
Yes, we do enjoy the tango, yes.
Okay. And what is it that makes you want to travel to a certain place? Now you want to go to, what's the next place? Cayman Islands. Why there? What's there that you haven't done or seen?
I guess I'm not really that familiar with it, so I'm going.
So something that you don't know of a place, you will try to discover it.
Right.
All right. What do you want to learn when you travel? Paul, what do you want to learn when you travel?
Well, I follow, since I grew up on a farm, frequently I'm very interested in what agriculture is going on in the various places, what they're growing, how they live, and use the products that they grow, particularly in the bigger countries in Africa. That was very interesting to see. And we have traveled in the Caribbean. We've decided that we would trade into a timeshare resort for a week on each island to be there long enough to learn about the people and so forth, instead of just a few hours as you do off a cruise boat.
All right. So very interesting. So you all have a purpose in going there. It's something new. You want to see. You want to verify if it's a good country. It's a Paris of South America. All right. Let's go a little deeper. You have traveled 121 countries, Jerry, and speak up a little louder for me, please, so they could hear you.
Sure.
What countries are similar or different in your opinion, based on culture or family or government or the people? What countries are similar or different? You take which side you want. Give me 2 countries that are very similar or 2 countries that are very different, and tell us why is that so, because you've traveled so much, Jerry.
Well, I have found that the Scandinavian countries are very similar to each other. They have a very strong infrastructure, and they value and have a good educational system as well. And they also have excellent food. Mm-hmm. So we've really enjoyed going to the Scandinavian countries.
So the Scandinavian countries are similar in that mode.
Yes.
What countries have you traveled that, just give me two countries that are really different in the way they handle the people, they govern, the taxes? What have you noticed that are very different from each other of these two countries? Which two countries are very different to you?
I would say Canada and Vietnam would be
Okay.
very, very different from each other. In Vietnam, of course, they have a lot of tourists there, and their culture is entirely different than Canada. The tax structure and Canada is so similar to the United States, so there's a lot of difference between those two countries.
Well, you said Canada. What cultural thing do you see in Vietnam that's very different from you compared to Canada, right?
Yes.
So what can you be specific in exactly what culture in Vietnam that's completely different from Canada?
The music and the performances, for instance, they have water puppets in Vietnam that obviously they don't have in Canada.
How about vice versa? What do they have in Canada they don't have in Vietnam, and culture-wise or government-wise?
That's a good question.
I'm here to probe. If you don't have the answer, it's fine with me.
Yeah,
But do you find any other difference between Canada and Vietnam that makes it very different?
Well, obviously,
Attitude, mannerism, taxes, anything you want to include in that
well,
topic?
not very familiar with the tax structure in either country. But of course, the weather is entirely different in each country. Of course,
Okay.
Canada has a winter season,
All right.
But that's all I can think of.
Okay. And Margaret and Paul, what countries do you think are similar and or different in your opinion? Either one of you can talk
Well,
about.
China and Russia just don't have the same
Okay.
values we have. We went to Tibet, and that's very different. You
But
know,
Tibet is not in China, so it's a different
no,
country.
no, another country.
Another
yeah,
country, okay.
yes, another one. Yeah. And there again, I feel very
Tell me what's the difference between China and what was the other one?
Russia.
Russia. Why are they so different? Is it the government?
I think it's the government. I think what the government is requiring of the people,
Right.
and what they can or can't do. And
Let me ask you, Paul, when you see something so different between China and Russia, how do you react to that? You just say, oh, that's interesting. Do you compare it with the United States when you see there are differences?
Well, right, and I would say China and Russia both share something very close in that they're both controlled to where their individual freedoms are very well controlled.
Okay.
But even aside from that, the interesting part, and particularly in China, since we spent the most time there, and it was after the Olympics at the time,
That'd be
so
2008, right?
so there were a lot of young people that spoke English. The signs were bilingual. It was easy to get around. The Chinese people seemed very happy. They were able to celebrate as families, and they really, really, really liked Americans.
Oh,
They were very anxious. They have a custom also that when they're on holiday and so forth, taking pictures with their family, they would grab Americans to be in their picture.
Oh.
I don't know if Jerry's experienced that or not, but that's something we definitely did.
So you can see these three people, they have in-depth answers regarding to that question. All right, we got our last question is, I know that all of you have benefited from traveling. So you got people out there watching and they've never traveled, they're listening to you. What can you tell them why traveling is so beneficial and so good? What have you learned that you can tell the people in public there that have never traveled? And if they have time and money, of course, they're going to follow what you say. What would you say is what makes traveling very beneficial for anyone?
I just read something recently that traveling is kind of like reading a book. That if you don't travel, you've really only turned the first page of the book. And I think that is really a very good motto.
All right.
A lot of people feel like that for instance, in the United States, that we have the highest standard of living. But when you visit Scandinavia and other countries in the world, you find out that that's really not the case at all.
Okay.
And the most important thing I think that we have discovered is that everybody wants to be happy. Everyone really wants the same thing. In many cases, the only thing that impedes them from that is their government.
Very good point. Very good point from Jerry. Do you want to add something to that, Margaret and Paul, regarding why the benefits of traveling?
Countries are just like anybody. We're all humans. We have all desires, and they're no different. And true, they want to be happy.
Okay. How about you, Paul? How about you, Paul?
Yeah, I think it's very true, and I think the big advantage is that people should, may have perceptions of people in different countries because they look different, speak different, have different customs. But if they go there, I think they'll find out that there's more similarities from those people to themselves. But they want to live and work and are proud of what they do, and it just there'd be less animosity between countries if people would visit. The people to people would. You see that the other countries are also good countries as well.
Okay, one follow-up question. I had a question that will follow up. It's not on my paper here. So when you go home, you've got all this experience. You've tried, we've had the, what is that? We saw gnocchi. We had the, what's the name of that food that we had? Cannelloni. Right? Cannoli, okay. What are you going to tell the people that you know who've never traveled, not the ones who've traveled already, back home, so they can learn something from you? What will you tell them of your travels? What will you tell them? How will you share your knowledge?
On this trip, we would say that we've had many different varieties of gelato.
Okay.
And also several different wine tastings. And of course, just last night we saw from a distance an eruption of a volcano. These are, a lot of these things that you can see, of course, in the United States. But I want to close with this. As much as we've traveled around the world and we've seen a lot of things, when we come back home and we travel to various parts of the United States, like the Rockies, the West Coast, the East Coast up in Massachusetts, and then we really understand that our country is absolutely beautiful, and the people in our country are just as friendly as most of the people in the countries that we have visited. So I don't want to dilute in any way our love of what is available and what we have in the United States by saying how much we like to travel outside of the United States.
Oh, very good point. Margaret and Paul, can you add something to that? What will you tell people who've never traveled in Iowa that would help them understand what the world is like? Because you are veteran travelers.
First of all, if you don't go and see it in person, you don't understand. People have some misconceptions about Iowa, thinking it's all cornfields and stuff like that, or everybody's on the farm or whatever, and it's not so. So you need to travel and see. As I say, you have a book which is mostly one-dimensional, but as you travel, it becomes three-dimensional, and you understand or.
Very good point. Paul, you want to add to that?
Well, I think, a lot of people, when we're traveling internationally, as retired people, we're able to do things in our stage of life that a lot of these people, especially if they're still working, they don't have the time or money, resources to do that. But I always encourage them, get to know the United States as much as you can, because that's just as valuable.
So traveling, I think what you're all saying is that when you're traveling, you're learning. And when you're learning, you're absorbing. And when you're absorbing, it's maybe time to relate what you've learned to other people around your community. Is that basically right? You travel to learn?
I want to make a comment that my parents were travelers, goers and doers, and they first traveled way back in 1954, going over to Denmark to visit my dad's aunts and uncles and cousins, and let's see, where was I going with this?
Go ahead, yeah.
I'm
Aunts and uncles.
It was something that other people in their community reacted to that because they had 4 girls at home,
Okay.
and they took off and went to Europe for 8 weeks.
Oh.
But when they came home, they had all these slides, and they were going around to groups showing
Right.
their travel slides.
Yeah.
Many times it was just
Because they thought-
well, they were being asked.
Yes.
People weren't traveling as
And
much
they were-
then. And they were being asked to come and present a program with their slides. So
Do you feel like you guys are ambassadors when you come home to the places you've been? Do you feel that, or you're just going home and relaxing? That's it. I had a wonderful time. Do you have time to communicate with others as an ambassador of the place that you've been?
Well, actually, yeah, I'm glad that you brought up the word ambassador, because I think that everyone in the United States who travels internationally should be an ambassador for the United States. We should be the best representative that we can be
Of the country.
when we're traveling in another country.
Right. So you hear it from these 3 people: Jerry on my left, Margaret and her husband on the right. They are really good travelers, and they've learned a lot. And I hope this interview will help you to understand that traveling can be very important in your life. Marcel Castillo on board the Artemis. It's a nice weather. So I hope you people out there will be able to travel and learn from our interviews here. Thank you very much.
Oj naš Karona